And we're live. Hi everyone. Welcome to another instalment of Train Your Dog Month. I'm Patrina Firth from the APDT. We've got a month-long programme of different sessions from APDT members on all kinds of topics. And tonight I'm joined by Annette Bowcott. Annette's a dog trainer of over 25 years and she's based down in Hampshire where she runs her business Hamble Hounds. So I'm going to bring her on. Hi Annette.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Can I just check that everybody can hear us? Can everybody see that's tuning in? Just drop a little yes, hello, thumbs up, reaction in the comments. That would be lovely. We'll just wait for those to come in. I didn't ask you your story, whether you had an interesting in as to how you got into dog training. Do you have a little story for people? How did you end up working with dogs?
I don't have a little story really, but I was into training and development with adults, particularly people with disabilities. And I was one of those revolting children that always ran over to dogs when I was sort of started crawling. So it was always an interest and it just all came together.
Great, nice. You're also a Tellington T-Touch Practitioner and you use that quite a bit in your work as well, don't you?
Yeah, lovely stuff.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to you because you're going to be presenting to us about why dogs don't listen. And this is going to be a really... I've seen some of the slides and it's going to be quite an informative talk. So get your little thinking caps on and get your brains open because Annette's going to be teaching us a few things. Over to you, Annette.
Thank you. No pressure at all, Patrina.
No.
Hi everybody. I've been training for 25 years or so, so I wanted to talk about something that I find I talk about so much to so many clients, and I find it really helpful and really informative to people. So I know there are some trainers listening, and you might know all. Well, you will know all this already, but hopefully it'll be informative to people newer to the dog world. So we know that in general, dogs are really eager. They love to learn. They love connecting with us. And with our positive reinforcement training, they just get joy out of doing stuff with us. But there are times when they don't seem to listen. They won't respond. They won't control themselves. So they might be jumping up, dragging on the lead, dragging you down the road, digging holes in the ground, just being a bit of a pain, really, in many ways. And that's really what I'm going to talk about. There is another aspect to this too, which again is pretty frequent, is some people's dogs they'll come and say, my dog's really unpredictable. Sometimes it will walk past the black dog from 2 doors down, it will be fine. 2 days later, it wants to take its head off. So that is also going to be covered in what I'm talking about tonight. So hopefully that will be helpful if that fits your dog. There's a really good physiological reason for this. I'm going to quickly touch on it. Big subject, could be here for hours, won't bore you that much. But it is all to do with the central nervous system. So basically our bodies, and I'm saying ours because us dogs, most mammals are pretty much the same with this. Our bodies like to be at rest. Being at rest is less energy intensive. So they want our heart rate to be nice and even, fairly slow, laid back. Want our breathing rate to be even. They want to be digesting our last meal nice and calmly. So that's our sort of nice default setting. But we've also evolved in quite dangerous situations. So our bodies have to have a defense mechanism. And this is that central nervous system, the automatic nervous system, defends us, if you like, if the brain picks up that there are anything dangerous about. So if Patrina, you can pop the first slide up for me. So the central nervous system is totally automatic. We do not have anything to do with this. And it's sort of split into two, really. There's the one that I've already talked about, the rest and digest state, and it's that to sort of, hey man, everything's cool, let's just chill out here. But if the brain picks up, the amygdala in the brain picks up reports that there's perhaps something new, always potentially dangerous, we don't know what it's going to do, something unexpected, something scary that we've encountered before and it was scary, pain, and often for the dogs that we deal with, just an exciting experience. So as the body picks those up, the amygdala sends out a signal and says, hang on, we need to deal with this. And it floods the body with adrenaline. Thanks, Katrina. I think that will get rid of that slide. And what happens, there are three major effects when we get this chemical release into the body. Firstly, energy is produced. And that energy may come out differently in different dogs. So some dogs might just run about, some might jump up, they might grab hold of you, might drag you down the road on the lead, they may bark. Lots of vocalization with some dogs. So that energy is produced, it has to come out one way or another. There is a little caveat to that, which I'm not going to talk about tonight, but it's worth knowing about, is sometimes the animal will go into an absolute freeze and everything just shuts down. But I won't deal with that tonight. So we have energy production, frantic energy production. This next bit, I think, for me, is really helpful to know, because the second effect is, and I'm putting this crudely, it shuts down the thinking bit of our brain. So if my body picks up that there's a tiger just over there, it doesn't want me to go, oh, there's a tiger, what should I do? It wants me to have seen that orange stripe and started to run. And the human equivalent of this, which I find helpful, is you're driving down the road in your car, somebody pulls out in front of you. You don't say, oh, what an idiot, I've got to brake. Your body's already slammed the brakes on for you. Afterwards, you might feel sick, you might be shaky, heart's thumping. Personally, I would start swearing because that's how I deal with that situation. But the point is, your body has just worked. And really interestingly, if in that moment somebody in the car said to you, what's 2 plus 2? You probably wouldn't even hear the question, let alone have the brain power left over to say the answer's 4. So when our dogs become adrenalized, if that's a threshold, and we'll look at this again in a minute, but under the threshold they are rational, over there they've lost it. Even if they are the best trained dog in the world and you spent lots of good quality training on them, if they're over threshold and you give them a cue like come here or sit down or stop jumping up or whatever your cue is, they're not even going to hear it. I don't mean they physically can't hear it, but they're just not processing it. So there's no rational thought, there's no decision making going on. The body's just in a reactive mode. And then the third effect of this adrenaline surge is it basically shuts down the digestive system. So you may have gone out, you might have got all your training in your head, you've got all your positive reinforcement, you know, your pound of rump steak, and you're saying, look, if you can just stop doing what you're doing, there's rump steak here. And the dog's not even noticing the rump steak. It just has no relevance to them. So you can see from those three things that energy production, that not thinking, not being able to hear your cues, and not wanting food makes training and being with that dog really difficult. And of course, if they're a big dog, it's physically really difficult as well. It's really hard to cope with them. So there's some things to think about with adrenaline and to understand, which will help forward planning. We can get little spurts. We're always getting little spurts of adrenaline. And that might be, if there's a noise outside, I'll get a little spurt of adrenaline. If the doorbell rings, if I get up from here and I don't have slippers on at the moment and I stub my toe on something, little spurt of adrenaline. These things don't have to be big. They can just be in our normal life. We're getting little spurts of adrenaline. The important thing to know is those spurts of adrenaline stay in the body for at least 3 days. Some authorities will say even longer than that. And what that means is that you then get an accumulation, a build-up of adrenaline, which takes you closer to threshold. And if we can have the second slide, Katrina. So, as you can see from here, the red line is the threshold. When we go over the threshold, we're in that fight or flight mode. And what I'm just trying to show here is if our background adrenaline is quite high anyway, so maybe we're an anxious dog, or we've got a lot of pain, or there's something happening that's stressful, it doesn't take us very long to go over threshold. Whereas if our background adrenaline is low, we can have many more little spurts to build up before we go over threshold. Thanks. And I think, Katrina, if we can go on to slide 3 now. So I'm sorry, this slide's not that clear on here, but I talked earlier about some people coming to us and saying, my dog's really unpredictable. And what happens is, on this slide, it's a story about Fido, who goes for a walk on Monday morning, and he's had a really chilled weekend in a quiet household, so he's pretty laid back on Monday, and he sees the black dog from 2 doors down, and just walks past it. Tuesday, the dustbin lorry comes up behind him. It's pretty well socialised, but because it's hissy, our body has a reaction to it, so we've got another little spurt of adrenaline. And as you can see then, that adrenaline adds up, that accumulates, and we're getting a bit higher. Now on the Wednesday, the grandchildren comes round. He loves the grandchildren. Nothing difficult about this, he just loves them, and he gets really, really excited. More adrenaline. So at the end of Wednesday night, we're knocking on threshold. He goes out on the Thursday morning for exactly the same walk as he did on Monday, sees the black dog, and that spurt of adrenaline takes him over threshold. And he reacts to the black dog, and then he gets told off, and it all gets horrible. Thanks, Katrina. That's lovely. So I always find it really hard not seeing an audience, because I don't know whether this is making sense to you, but I'm hoping it is. So one thing that we can do to really help ourselves with dogs, if they're not listening, if we can't always get that connection, is to look at adrenaline and get their background adrenaline so low that you've got further to go before they go over threshold. And there's lots and lots of tiny little things we can do. It's about being quite petty at this stage. Things that affect adrenaline to think about. Obviously, lots of stuff in the environment. Dogs' paws are very sensitive. They're like our hands. And we take them out and we walk them over all sorts of different surfaces. And particularly want to be aware of this with young puppies. So anything new is potentially dangerous. It's going to give you a little adrenaline spurt. So just walking over a new surface can ping a dog up. And yet we drag them around. We take them on grass, we take them on gravel, we take them on shiny surfaces, and we don't even think that that might be an issue. So obviously noises, smells, all of those things outside are just hammering the brain, bing, 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 bing. So if you've got a young puppy or your dog is a little bit anxious or whatever, really think about how much exposure you give them, and perhaps break that down and make it shorter, build it up gradually. Food, and I know Patrina's got a good story about this. Food can make a difference, like giving blue Smarties to children, and ping them up. And Patrina, are you there? Would you like to tell the story of your McDonald's man?
Oh wow! It was only if you haven't watched it's kind of gross. But there's a program which came out quite a long time ago now called Super Size Me, and it was where a man went and ate food from a particular chain of fast food restaurants with golden arches, and how he felt after he'd done that. And I think there's probably a few spin-offs about that kind of thing where somebody's gone and eaten a really bad diet for a month, and then I think that there's been some experiments where they've even sort of measured cognitive decline and how people feel. But basically, when you're feeding your dog, you want to make sure that they've got a complete diet that's nutritionally balanced in whatever way you choose to feed them. You know, we're not here to tell you feed raw, feed fresh, feed kibble, feed wet, whatever. But it's just to make sure that they're getting the right diet. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Um, so how we handle them. Now, I love dogs. Some of you will know me. You know, I'd spend all day rolling about on the floor with dogs. Wonderful. But is that right for the dog? You know, we tend to go up to dogs, go, "Hello, mate, how are you?" Great for some dogs, love it. But for other dogs, hands going towards their heads, that movement, that intensity is just too much. So it's not a right or wrong situation, but it is a good policy to just start critiquing what you do and how you greet and things to see if that's giving them big spurts of adrenaline that's going to stay in their body. And obviously looking at greeting habits and things will come into that as well. Subtle things sometimes, like not having enough rest, can really, really muck us up. And again, humans, there's a lot of research on the need for good quality sleep in humans too. So I'd suggest you use rest times, use Kongs and things to help your dog to build in rest times to his day. We'll talk about using food in a minute. Even more subtle things is when you put your harness and lead on your dog, one, does that excite them? Because that's an adrenaline burst. Or does it make them back off? Even if it's just a slight little, "Oh, I'm not sure about this." If either of those occur, you can do some changes, very subtle, calm, quiet changes to make that harness and lead going on just softer, less adrenalizing. And to take that a step further, if you've got a problem with dogs not listening to you when you take them out for a walk and they're pulling you down the road, if you've primed them with adrenaline before you even get out of the house, you've really not helped yourself getting them to walk nicely on the lead outside. So it's really just, my message is look at what you do, critique what you do in terms of whether that is giving spurts of adrenaline. And if it is, try and slow things down, try and make it easier, calmer, whatever. One of the massive helps, I will shut up in a minute, Patrina, I know we're coming up to time, but one of the really, really best ways of getting background adrenaline down is to help the dog change its own brain chemistry. And one way of doing that, or three ways of doing that, is chewing, sniffing, licking, you can use their daily allowance of food to produce endorphins. And basically we're going for the, hey man, everything's cool, let's just chill out here. Now, this is entirely what I do with my dog, but I'll share it with you for what it's worth. My dog doesn't get any food in a bowl. He gets his food scattered in the garden. He gets it in kongs or snuffle mats, obviously under supervision. Just hidden, chucked in boxes so he can tear them out, whatever. He will spend at least 45 minutes getting his breakfast and at least 45 minutes getting his supper. And will save some of his food for training in the daytime as well. But that's an hour and a half a day that my dog's self-calming, chilling, being very natural. Sniffing is so natural to a dog. Softening his body as well as he's just wandering around the garden, sniffing things out. His body's softening. So rather than a tense dog that's excited, he's just going, hey, this is cool. So I'm going to stop there. I really hope that's been helpful. And if there's any questions, I think Patrina's going to share them with us.
Thank you, Annette. That went quite deep into everything. We have got a question here from Helen. Let me just bring it up on screen. And I think that was relating to your the thresholds and things like that. Is this the same, similar to trigger stacking? We probably, trainers of all different variants have got different feelings on that phrase, trigger stacking, but is that what people would interpret it as?
It could be. I tend to really try hard not to use sort of what I think of as jargony things, because for the very reason you've said, it means different things to different people. But yeah, it absolutely. If you look at those little spurts as the dog having a reaction, it's a subconscious reaction. You may not even see it. If they're under threshold, you won't have even seen that little spurt. But they are still building up, stacking up, if you like, till you go over the threshold.
Yeah, and I think, that answers it brilliantly. I think there's a lot of the time we don't even realise that there are triggers around which are or problems for our dogs. When I took my dog for a walk on New Year's Day after lots and lots of fireworks, which she was pretty much fine with, she's never done this before. She didn't want to walk anywhere. She didn't want to walk past any of the places that she could smell the firework debris still around, and I was like, what's wrong with her? And it was because of that, and
And one of the things that I personally have found so helpful with this, because I did used to have a bit of a temper, is now I know that it's a physiological response and the dog isn't deliberately being stubborn, is deliberately not choosing to walk and just go, I'm not going to walk, or is deliberately jumping up at my visitors just because it wants to embarrass me. That's not the case. This is the body doing this without the dog having any control over it at all. And because I now know that, I don't get frustrated. I don't get angry. I just go, what the hell have I got to do to be able to change this? And the importance of that is dogs are non-verbal communicators. If our internal dialogue is bloody dog, if I'm allowed to say that on here, sorry.
it's okay.
Don't be so naughty, don't do that. Don't jump up at that person. The dog will see that in our body. He'll process that as us getting angrier, bigger, more intense. Guess what that does to adrenaline? It pumps their adrenaline up. So we go round in this vicious circle that dog gets adrenalized, we get stroppy, that adrenalizes the dog even more. And actually developing this ability just to step back and go, what's going on? How can I help this? How can I recognize that my dog isn't choosing not to go for a walk on New Year's Day, but actually is finding this really difficult, let's go back. And maybe if she was really noise sensitive, I'm telling grannies to suck eggs here, but if she had been really noise sensitive on that night, putting something in place, and I'll just push T-Touch for that as well, just to help with that. So next time there's fireworks, you'll be less adrenalized when you walk the next day.
Yeah, really interesting. And it's definitely something that I was even joking about a few days previously, saying, if people need to do things about fireworks, they need to start for New Year's fireworks, they need to start in the summer, and kind of going through all this, oh, well, people just need to do this, and then it happens to you and you're the dog trainer and you think, oh, okay, I better take some of my own advice on here and go away next year so I don't have to deal with it.
Really, really interestingly on that, just talking about my dog, he had tendonitis 2 years ago. He was in quite a bit of pain. He was so noise reactive. He's the most laid back Labrador, anything can happen to me. I'm absolutely fine. He was as noise sensitive as I was almost having to sort of hold him down. And that's because that pain had really pumped him up. So pain.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got to stop. Sorry.
No. I'm saying, it pumped him up. We've got a little comment from Emma here, just saying, so helpful, thank you. Really useful in helping me get affirmation of what I know. Helping to
Lovely, thank you, Emma.
And then Sarah's got a little question. Do you know of any studies or further reading? What kind of things might you...
Oh my goodness. There's there is and there isn't, Sarah, to be honest. Would you leave that with me and let me have a chat to Patrina tomorrow and see what we can come up with, and we'll put them on Facebook page?
We can answer them in here. A really good book which kind of explains it all, and he's written quite a few books that go into it, is Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Sapolsky. That's quite a good one, which is quite broad, but it really talks about stress and what happens in the brain and that kind of thing, and it's quite easy to get hold of as well. Okay.
And things like the window of tolerance and stuff, that's all human psychology too. So, any of that you can read and it's still relevant.
And then a little comment, this makes massive sense. I was working with a nervous dog today and met another dog and seemed okay and walked past. Met the same dog 5 minutes later and went nuts. So, I see the threshold. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And one of the things that we all do is when we're working with dogs like that, it's about just doing little drip feeds. Little drip feeds. And for families working with their own dogs, it's so hard because their whole mindset is, I've got to take my dog for a walk. It's got to go for a walk. And actually, for that dog, that may not be the right thing to do. Maybe standing outside their house for 2 minutes is the right thing to do. And then 3 minutes the next day, and doing it really gradually. So
great. I'm just going through them here. Somebody said Jacqueline Smallwood's a good watch if you have time. I'm sure she is. She's coming on later on in the month to do a live about something else. So she's an APDT member as well, Dr. Jacqueline Smallwood. Okay. I often see owners stressed in classes and their dogs feeding off it. Is there evidence that dogs detect other dogs over their threshold? 100%. If you've got a dog acting up, I would say a dog is definitely picking up how another dog feels in the room, for sure.
Yeah. And don't forget too with this that we are clumsy as a species and we don't pick up on smells, whereas dogs will be acutely aware of pheromones. And I'm probably going to need a shower after having done this scary broadcast, because I guess my pheromones are probably going, this is hot. And they'll pick up from other dogs, they'll pick up from us.
But the interesting thing that I could say to you there is the more you do it and the more you practice it, the less you'll have that response. So you should just come on live more and do more of them.
Yes, dear, thank you.
Good. And then just some nice comments. Sarah says she works in veterinary behaviour medicine, so she loves studies. Yeah. And just some nice comments from some members that are watching. So Laura.
Thank you.
And Sue. Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So we haven't got any more questions for now. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. We've got a night off tomorrow. It is allowed sometimes. But we will be joined by APDT Vice Chair Denise Armstrong on Sunday, and she's going to be talking to us about all things setters, red setters, English setters. I think she might talk about Gordon setters as well. I think she's had quite a few different types of setters over the years, and they've all been very different in their temperaments. Georgia talked about gun dogs last night, and she sort of touched on setters. But if you've got setters, or you've often wondered what the difference is or how you work with them, what their motivations are, then join us at 6 on Sunday, because it's going to be a good one. Annette, have you got any final words you want to say?
No, just go out, enjoy them, and critique what's happening.
Yeah, follow their emotions. Exactly. Great. Well, have a lovely weekend, everybody, and thank you so much, Annette. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.